The last video that we're going to talk about here on your political parties now is dealing with public opinion. And before we get into all this, I just want to make sure that, kind of as a review a little bit, to make sure you guys understand for the test here, when it comes to the general campaign now, okay, we went through the primaries. That's where the two parties run against each other for the nomination. And then after the convention, where the two parties have their big meeting and everyone gets together and plans everything out. Then it comes the general election. Now, in the general election, we talked about the three C's: the looking confident, the competence, being able to come off and show that you have that ability to be able to be personable in front of the people and all that. So those kinds of things. We also talked about the strategies involved in a campaign in which you got to mobilize your base. You got to be able to persuade those independents. You got to be able to convert those people into your group. Then finally, after that, what a candidate has got to be able to do then is he's got to be able to get that media now, because now the media is going to be scrutinizing him. The media is going to be coming after that candidate big time, because there's only two other people in the race then. So we talked about then in the other videos and on the notes and everything about how, one, the media influences the candidates, and we talked about that with a gatekeeper and those things, but also now how the candidate can influence the media, and that was with the propaganda techniques and being able to persuade and get the media to be on their side there. Now we're going to talk about the second major factor that a candidate needs to have if they're going to win, and that is they've got to get public opinion on their side. Having the media, being able to manipulate the media as a candidate can do, that definitely does help. But what public opinion really is it's described as those attitudes held by a significant number of people on matters of government and policy. Now we have lots of different kind of opinions out there, and there's a whole kinds of different issues. And in class, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. But basically, one of the things is there really isn't a straight public opinion of the people. You can say, well, 80% believes this and 60% believes that, but in reality, really, most people don't have a very good idea about the issues. You ask somebody what do they feel about Obamacare. Oh, I hate Obamacare. I can't stand Obamacare. But then you begin to ask them questions about Obamacare. Do you believe in allowing your children to be able to stay on your policy until they turn 26? Well, absolutely. There should be no question about that. Do you believe in elimination of pre-existing conditions? Well, absolutely. Do you believe that it is right for the insurance policies to put a cap on how much money that they are going to give you under your insurance plan? Well, hell no. All of those things are included under Obamacare. The fact of the matter is most people don't understand the concept of politics. They don't follow it very closely, as you can see here from the percentages. And so as a result of that, what we get is a very skewed, a very problematic public opinion out there. The knowledge and the information about the people there is not very great. Basically, people have three kinds of opinions. They have a dynamic, they can have an intense, or a very casual. Most people out there are very casual with their opinions. In other words, they're non-committal. You ask them what's their opinion about something, and in most cases they have no idea, no clue, and they don't care. Now, you do get a lot of people who are very dynamic in their opinions, meaning that they're very fluctuating. And what that means is that they could go one way on an issue dealing when you could persuade them to be very anti-guns, and then all of a sudden you hear somebody else giving them argument about being pro-guns, and they could switch their position very easily. So we have a large group of people out there that are very fluctuating in their opinions. So when you hear a politician come out and say, well, 52% believe this, of that 52%, not a very strong number of that percentage is probably very intense, which is the third one there. Intense, a very firm opinion on it. More than likely, when you hear about these statistics, most people are not very firm in their opinions. They are much more dynamic. They could be swayed either way on it. And so again, there's a lot of ways that politicians can use these numbers to their advantage in order for them to be able to win. The other thing that gets very conflicting about all of this is the fact that how people's opinions about an issue can be switched very quickly dealing with the same issue. For example, you can ask the American public out there a simple question: do you love your country? And overwhelmingly, you're going to find 90% of the American public out there who love their country, very patriotic, and they love everything about their country, apple pie, America, all that kind of good stuff. But then you ask them about the government of America, their country, and they will quickly turn the other way and how the government's evil, corrupt, horrible, terrible. Well, that's because the Republican Party and the Tea Party has been very good at demonizing our government. Yet you begin to ask them very simple questions about, well, do you believe that government should be involved in building of our roads, in keeping our bridges safe, in keeping your public safe of your food and drugs? Well, absolutely. We got to have government doing that. Who else is going to do that? What about protecting your meat supply? Well, absolutely. How about the water supply? Of course, the government needs to be involved there. So then quickly you begin to see people who begin to argue that government is bad, evil, does nothing, is a waste. Now all of a sudden you want those same people are saying that we need to have government. It's the same thing when it comes to economics. You hear a lot of people argue that the United States is a capitalistic nation. We need to allow for free enterprise. We need to allow business to freedom to grow. Businesses need to thrive. They need to be able to be open, to be able to make their own products. And then all of a sudden you start to get people also talking about how big business is very corrupt, and how big business is nothing out there but for the profit, and how they're going to squash the little guy. And you see that in other things too, like inequality and freedom, all of those different issues. There's always those arguments. A lot of people will talk about this idea of freedom. You'll hear this a lot, how the United States has to be a free country, how we need to be able to do what we want and say what we want. Well, then of course you get the other side of that, where people start screaming and yelling that we need to start limiting freedoms because we should not be allowed to pray in school, or that obscenity and pornography is dirty and nudity is something that we should ban and get rid of. And we got to be able to cut down on the internet usage, and we need to do all these other things that are looked upon as being immoral and something that's going against the ideas of religion. Again, that's what makes opinion so hard, is the fact that the issues can be twisted and turned so easily. And that's really what a politician hopes for, because then that politician can take that information and use it however he or she wants to their advantage. Okay, where do you get your opinions from? Who do you get your opinions from? How do you formalize that? All of that is called political socialization. It's the process by which you and I basically come to think about politics. Now, where do you get your first socialization from? Well, your family. When you're a small child, basically you see the political world through the eyes of your family. Listening to mom and dad talk, listening to dad come home upset about that he had to pay more taxes this year than he did last year, and how the government is spending his money unwisely, and on and on and on. You listen to grandpa and grandma complain and bitch and moan about this and that, and upset about all of the foreigners coming into this country, and you hear all the racial tones coming into that, and you pick that up as a child. That's where your first really strong influence of your opinions come from, is your family. Then you go to school and you begin to meet friends and you begin to meet new people, and you begin to change some of those ideologies. You begin to change some of those opinions then. Further, you go on and you meet new people as you go into the workforce, and you go off to new schools, high school, college, etc. You start to build stronger relationships with people, especially of the opposite sex, and then you start to meet their friends and their family, and all of that begins to change your opinions. Finally, you get into the media. As you get older and become an adult, you become much more focused on the media. You start watching certain shows. You start reading more in the press. You start reading more in the newspaper, magazines, other articles, and those kinds of things. And you start picking up more and more information that starts to, again, change your opinion a little bit. All of these factors here listed, all of those are what's called our political socializations, which is the process by which we develop our ideas about politics and who we are. So what do you do with this stuff? Well, your last slide here explains what's known as political efficacy then. This is the belief in being able to accomplish something. My goal, being your teacher here, is I really want you to do number 6. I want you to get out there and vote. If nothing else that I can get you to do this year in this class is I really hope that I get something inspired in you that's going to get you out there to vote. And I know we talk a lot of negative about government and about the corruption and about the money and about all this other, but the fact of the matter is, if you, me, and everybody around you doesn't get out there and make the change with the vote, I don't care who it is you vote for, but if you don't get out there and make your opinion known with your vote, then really The fact is, nothing else is going to matter out there. We're never going to make any change, and basically everything's going to be falling apart. Now, what I would also hope you do is, number one, follow politics, get involved, get out there and run for a campaign. I don't want you to run for president of the United States, but why can't you run for city council? Why can't you run for your school board? Nothing says you can't. And those positions are just as important as anything else that's out there. Volunteer to work for a political organization. Get out there and be a staff, run a campaign, help promote it. Now, the other ones gets a little bit more serious when you're protesting civil disobedience and violence, but all of those are still political efficacies. Your sense of duty, participation, being involved in the process. That's what is all about when you're dealing with politics, is taking your opinions, formulating them, and then using them out there in the public force. That's going to finish up with this video now, and we're pretty much done with most of all the notes. We'll finish up the rest of them in class then and get you ready for your test then.